Good evening, everyone. Back with another knife review. Hope everyone's having a solid weekend, gearing up for Father's Day. Today we are looking at the Reeve knives. This is the large Inkosi in Singo, which has like a sheep's foot design. This is the box that it came in. Reeve does a great job with the boxes and kind of just the packaging that their knives come with. I also really do enjoy the fact that they include Loctite as well as you get grease, grease for this knife, as well as the tools to take it apart. So that's really neat about Reeves, that they, they kind of expect you to and encourage you to take apart your knives, clean them, etc. And with that, I apologize for the way that my fingers look today, because I actually spent the better part of today wrestling this Shirogorov. So this Ursus that I just picked up, I'm getting a little bit of lock stick, so took it apart about 4 times today, and I'm actually really excited to review a knife that's running on washers as opposed to loose bearings, because that was an absolute headache, and I'll get into that when I actually end up reviewing it. The details on this knife: so it has a CPM S35 VN steel blade. The handle is, ready for it, 6 alpha I4V titanium, both sides. The blade length is 3.6 inches. You're looking at 4.8 inches closed with an 8.4 inch OAL, or overall length. Before I get into this more, I know I keep saying that, but this one is a little bit, I don't know if it's upgraded, it's changed a little bit. So it's running a millet clip here, so if you have an extra $150 laying around you don't know what to do with, throw that on there, as well as a Jekyll to hide back spacer. So this gives you a more pronounced lanyard hole. If you've watched any of my videos, you know I'm not a huge fan of throwing lanyards on knives, but the person that I bought this from, which this is obviously a user, I have had other Reeves in the past. I've had a Sebenza, I've had a small Inkosi, and now finally this one. And I look at this one, it's kind of a direct comparison to that Strider SNG slash XM18, so the Hinderer offering that I have. This just kind of completed the trifecta for me, but I really do like this knife. I've carried it quite a bit, and I do think I'm going to hold on to it, but again, the MSRP on this is $450, but then, you add a $150 clip to it, 100 and however much this back spacer is, and you're starting to look at a really rather expensive knife, which I'm not going to judge it for that. We're going to pretend this is a normal OEM one. The Reeve, this Inkosi, is weighing 4.96 ounces, so it's definitely hefty, but not anything you wouldn't expect from a full frame titanium knife. With that, we'll jump right into the pros. Before I get into that, though, I wanted to do a quick size comparison as compared to a Spyderco PM2, just so you can get an idea. And you'll see this is a common theme here. So a lot of the newer knives have better ergonomics. You can see this one's kind of like offset a little bit, and that's going to be one of the things that I cover here, is that Reeves, like the Sebenzas as well as the Inkosis, they're very linear. There isn't much ergonomics to it as far as the shape goes, but it does have decent ergonomics, but not to the tune of something like a Spyderco. The first pro is just going to be the fact that this is a timeless design. So Reeve has been winning awards, and I read it in one of the pamphlets that was in the box, since 2000. So they kind of revolutionized the higher end knife game, and I remember back in the day seeing the MSRP on these and just being like, man, that's a handgun all day. Like, I'm not gonna get one of these, but they are nice. They're worth it if you can afford it, and I think it's a really great gateway into kind of higher end knives. And in my experience, people who their entire lives have had $30 knives pick up a Reeve and they're like, okay, all right, I get it now. The next pro is going to be simplicity, and I swear I wrote this before I actually ended up tearing apart this Shiro Ursus, which is just driving me crazy. But there's no denying like the simplicity in the class of this knife. It's certainly the definition of a gentleman's folder. It's handsome, it's timeless. Love the bead blasted titanium. Another thing about Reeve, you can send it back for spa treatment. So that's really cool. I mean, if you want to get this thing cleaned up, which this one is probably due to be cleaned up, that's an option, and I really like that. I mean, there's pride of ownership in this, and Chris Reeve realizes that and gives you the option to send it back to get it worked on. The other thing that's neat about this is, since it comes with the tools for the pivot, you can actually control what this knife looks like or how the action is. Mine's kind of in the middle. Like you can flick it with your finger, but I do really like that controlled kind of more traditional opening of a Chris Reeve. If I want something that's super, fidgety and flicky, I have other knives for that. So that's pretty neat about this one. You can tune it, and they encourage you to tune it. And going back to the simplicity piece, this is running on phosphorus bronze washers, which, again, I'm not just saying it because of my experience with that Shiro today, but there is something nice about pulling a pivot apart and not having to pick up tiny little BVs all over. Against all odds, I haven't ever lost a bearing yet, but it is only a matter of time, and that is going to be a really, really crappy day for me. So this thing, super simple. Love that about it. The next pro is going to be the lockup. It tells old as time. These things, it's kind of like a bank vault when it locks up, and that's really cool. It does have a ceramic detent in it, silky smooth. I would describe it as kind of, running like metal over glass, super smooth. The lubricity is definitely there when you're opening and closing it, and it has very positive lockup. Love the sound that it makes. I have confidence in this knife. The next pro is going to be the blade thickness, and I think sometimes whether it can be a con for any knife where it's like, oh, the blade stock is too thick or too thin. This is a great kind of medium ground between sliciness and having some girth behind it. So I really do like this. I'm going to call it like a sliciness ratio there. It's thick enough blade stock, but it still remains slicey. So really great, middle of the road. I think they did a great job with that. The next pro is going to be the ergonomics for me, which, as I've said in my past videos, I do have big hands, but I kind of love these choils that are further back here that you can wrap your pointer finger as well as your middle finger around. Obviously, we're going to try to ignore this, but this is actually kind of a hot spot. So if you decide to throw a couple $100 at this thing and go with a Jekyll to Hyde backspacer, just keep in mind that will create a little bit of a hot spot back here. The next thing is the jimping, which I love the jimping on this knife. I think this kind of sets the standard for all of their jimping. I'm kind of a jimping snob. It's either, too pointy or too shallow. This is right in the middle. Love the spacing of it. Love the location of it. They did a great job with that. The last pro for me is just going to be the pride of ownership, which I already covered a little bit, but along with pride of ownership, you have to look at if you're starting to collect knives or you're not sure, you're kind of on the fence, realizing that, in this day and age, post-COVID, if it is post-COVID, I'm not really sure. But, as far as like brick and mortar stores that you can go in to test out one of these or put your hands on, they're definitely few and far between. And so the cool thing about getting a Chris Reeve is if you buy it and you don't like it, you'll get your money back with it. The resale value on these, again, I'm not going to call a knife an investment, but if there was a knife that was close to being an investment, Chris Reeve would be at one of the top three there, as far as an quote unquote investment goes. Next, I'm going to jump right into the cons of this knife, and similarly to the Strider SNG, this is a dated design. So I actually have a pretty funny comparison here in my complete conclusion that hopefully people that are watching this channel will get, but it is a dated design. This has been around for a long time, even realizing that the Inkosi is the newer version of the Sebenza 25. It's still they took a lot from that. They made little upgrades here and there. I don't have a Sebenza 25 to directly compare it to, but all said, we're not running multi-row or cage bearings, anything like that. Phosphorus bronze washers, this whole design of, this lockup, the action on it, the thumb studs. This has been around for a really long time, and the MSRP has not gone down. It's not like they came out with a newer version of this and every year the price goes down. They keep putting this model down your throat, and it sells. I can't really argue with them on that. The next con for me is the action, and just in the sense that it's not fidget friendly. I did cover that you can kind of tune it to be what you want. Mine, I definitely didn't want to have any blade play in it, so it's a little bit tighter, but again, just keep that in mind. I mean, this isn't going to be one of those knives that, you know, has a flipper tab on bearings that you're just sitting here running it all day. You know, it's not as fidget friendly as some people I think would lead you to believe that it is. The next con for me is going to be, if you do have larger hands, you might just find the handle to be a little bit too skinny. So compare that to, yeah, this stupid Shiro Ursus, just kidding, but kind of, as well as Spyderco PM2, and I apologize, these are just the two knives that I have out right now. But you know, it is a very slim handle design, and I think people that have larger hands will find, I mean, it's not bad. It's not as bad as some of the knives that I've tested out, but it is still on the skinny side. And like, you know, I was comparing this to a Strider SNG or an XM18. As far as ergos go, out of those three, this one probably has the worst ergonomics. I mean, that's just my opinion, but based on my experience, that's that's what I'm gonna say. The last con for me is just going to be the fact that this is heavy. So again, it's coming in at almost 5 ounces. This one, as far as like in your pocket goes, which I know with the Inkosi, they kind of changed the pocket angle for like how it sits. So it is better than my Sebenza, as I recall, but it still is it's on the heavier side. So just keep that in mind. And with that, that concludes my review of this knife. And yeah, get ready for it. This is going to be my comparison. So I look at the Chris Reeve large Inkosi. This is kind of like the 5th generation 4Runner of the knife world. You know, it's not broke, so why fix it? If you look at, you know, 4Runners that are for sale, like the MSRP has never changed. It's an old body on frame design, that old 4-liter they've been putting in it for years, and the resale value is absolutely crazy. So they haven't had to change this design to keep up with the smaller companies that are coming out with, I would venture to say, you know, better or more updated stuff at a cheaper price. But, you know, it is what it is. This thing, like, it holds its value. Once you get into one of these, it's not like you're going to be stuck with it or you won't be able to get rid of it. But like I said, I equate this to be the 5th generation 4Runner of the knife world. And then I really do think, in conclusion, that this is still relevant in 2022. You know, I would highly recommend this if you're thinking about getting into these higher end knives, picking between a Hinder XM18, a Strider SNG, or this one. But I would say this one's going to be a lot easier to get into. I haven't tracked down many Hinders. They come up from time to time, but there's literally, you know, there's a huge following behind Chris Reeve, and oh, by the way, like, they're still producing this knife. So you're gonna have a much better chance of finding one of these. If you want to find a user, you can go on Facebook, find one that way, as I did. But you know, they're still pumping these things out in Idaho, so your chances of scoring one of these are much greater. And I think you can kind of be more choosy then, because there are so many of them. It's not like, you know, a drop where you're just gonna have to pick up whatever you get and then deal with it, or try to trade up to what you want. You can get really creative with these, and there's tons of variations of it. You know, you can get half carbon fiber, you can get different inlays in it. This is definitely the traditional bead blasted with the blue thumb stud, but I like it, and I would start there because this is kind of the original look of it. So appreciate everyone tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, please throw them down below, and until next time, keep buying knives.